I was standing in my son's living room when I heard him cry my name from the dark. His voice was weak, like it had been dragged across broken glass. I followed the sound and found him chained to a metal pole in the corner, his leg bent the wrong way, swollen and purple. A heavy chain wrapped his ankle, locked tight. His face was pale, his lips shaking. Behind me, laughter burst from the dining room. Plates clinked. Glasses clashed. His in-laws were feasting like kings in his own home while my boy lay chained and broken in the dark. I felt my chest burn with a fire I had never known. If I screamed, they would hear me. If I ran, my son would be left to die. So I whispered his name and made a promise in my heart, one I knew would change all our lives forever. How did it come to this, and how far would I go to save him? Only hours earlier, my phone had buzzed with a message that felt colder than winter air. "Dad, please stay away for Christmas. Don't come, I'm fine, I'll call you later." It didn't sound like my son. He never called me Dad like that. He always said Papa, even as a grown man, and he never told me to stay away. Christmas was our time. Since his mother died, we made a promise to never spend Christmas apart. Even when he moved across town, even when he married, even when life got busy. I read the message again and again. Something felt wrong. My hands shook. I typed back asking if he was okay. The message showed read, but no reply came. Minutes passed, then an hour. The sky outside darkened. Christmas lights flickered on across the street, bright and cheerful, like nothing bad could ever happen in the world. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I tried again, same thing. I tried his wife's number. No answer. I sat on my couch, staring at the phone, listening to the ticking of the clock. Every tick felt like a warning. People say trust your family, but I had learned something hard in my life. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hide the most, and sometimes silence is the loudest scream. I grabbed my coat. The drive to his house felt longer than usual. Snow fell softly, covering the road like a white blanket, calm and quiet. Christmas songs played on the radio, happy voices singing about peace and joy. I turned it off. My mind kept replaying his message. Please stay away. Why would he beg me like that? When I pulled into his driveway, the house was glowing with light. Cars were parked everywhere. Laughter drifted through the walls. From the outside, it looked like a perfect Christmas party. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, still nothing. I tried the handle, locked. That was strange. My son never locked me out. I walked around to the side of the house. The kitchen window was cracked open just a little. Warm air spilled out, carrying the smell of roasted meat and spices. I heard voices inside, loud and cheerful. I pushed the window open and climbed in, careful not to make a sound. The kitchen was full of people I recognized too well. My son's in-laws, his wife's parents, her brothers, her cousins. They filled the house with their noise and laughter, wearing fine clothes, holding full plates. The table was heavy with food, more than enough for a feast. But something was wrong. My son was not there. I stepped back into the hallway, my heart pounding. "Where is he?" I whispered to myself. I moved room to room, checking everywhere. The living room, the guest room, the bathroom, nothing. Then I heard it. A soft sound, a breathy groan, coming from behind a closed door at the end of the hallway. The basement door. I reached for the handle. It was locked. My chest tightened. I leaned closer and heard it again. My son's voice, weak, pain-filled. "Papa." My hands shook as I searched the nearby shelf. I found a small tool kit. I didn't think. I just acted. I forced the lock until it snapped open with a dull crack. The stairs creaked as I went down. The basement light was off. The air was cold and damp. I flipped the switch. And that's when I saw him. My son, my boy, chained to a pole like an animal. His leg was broken, bent at a terrible angle. His shirt was torn. His face was bruised. His eyes widened when he saw me, filling with tears. "Papa," he whispered, "you weren't supposed to come." I rushed to him and knelt beside him. "What did they do to you?" I asked, my voice shaking. They said it was for my own good," he whispered. "They said I owed them." "Owed them what?" I asked. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. He cried softly, trying not to make noise. Above us, laughter exploded. Someone shouted a toast. Glasses clinked again. I felt something snap inside me. I tried to pull at the chain, but it was thick and strong, locked tight. I checked his leg carefully. He winced, biting his lip to keep from screaming. "We have to get you out," I whispered. "Now." "They'll hear you," he said. "They're watching, they always watch." My heart sank, watching how. He looked at the ceiling, then back at me. "Cameras," he whispered. "Everywhere. They said if I tried to escape, they'd finish the job." I froze. Cameras. This wasn't just cruelty. This was control. "How long?" I asked. 3 days, he said. "Since yesterday morning." 3 days, chained, hurt, while they laughed and ate upstairs. I clenched my fists. "Why?" I asked again. "Why would they do this to you?" He swallowed hard. "Money," he said, "and something worse." I leaned closer. "Tell me everything." But before he could speak, footsteps sounded on the stairs. I turned around just as the basement light flicked off. Darkness swallowed us. A voice echoed from the top of the stairs, calm and cruel. "I told you locking the door wouldn't stop him. Fathers always follow their instincts." My blood ran cold. The light flicked back on. Standing at the top of the stairs was my son's father-in-law, smiling like a man who had already won. The basement light buzzed back on, harsh and bright. My son's father-in-law stood at the top of the stairs with his hands in his pockets, smiling like nothing was wrong. Behind him, 2 other men appeared, blocking the way up. One was my son's wife's older brother. The other was a cousin I barely knew. All of them looked calm. Too calm. "Papa," my son whispered, fear thick in his voice, "please don't fight them." I stood up slowly and placed myself in front of him. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Why is my son chained like an animal in his own house?" I asked. The father-in-law sighed as if I had asked a silly question. "You weren't supposed to be here," he said. "He warned you." "I don't care what message he sent," I replied. "I'm here now, let him go." He walked down the stairs slowly, step by step, like a man enjoying a show. "You don't understand," he said. "This is family business." "He is my family," I snapped, "and you have no right." "No right," he interrupted, laughing softly. "We gave him everything, this house, this life, that wife upstairs who stood by him, and he betrayed us." My son shook his head weakly. "Papa, it's not like that." I turned to him. "Tell me the truth," I said gently. Before he could speak, the father-in-law raised a hand. "Careful," he warned. "Words have consequences." I felt anger rise in my chest, hot and dangerous. "You hurt him," I said. "You broke his leg." The older brother shrugged. "He fell," he said. "Accidents happen." My son cried out, "That's a lie." The room went quiet. The father-in-law's smile faded. "You see," he said calmly, "he still doesn't know when to stay quiet." I realized then that this wasn't just about money. This was about power, control, breaking him so he would obey. "What do you want?" I asked. The father-in-law looked at me with cold eyes. "We want what he promised us, and until we get it, he stays right where he is." I glanced around the basement. I saw cameras in the corners, small red lights blinking. They really were watching, every move, every breath. I took a deep breath. "Let me take him to the hospital," I said. "His leg is broken. He could lose it." "Or he could lose much more," the cousin said quietly. I knew then that arguing would get us nowhere. I needed time. I needed a plan. "Please," I said, lowering my voice. "I'm an old man, Christmas night. Do you really want police lights outside your house?" The father-in-law studied me. For a long moment no one spoke. Then he smiled again. "You're smarter than I thought," he said. Fine, you can stay, but you don't leave, either of you. My stomach dropped. Stay. Yes, he said. You'll join the celebration upstairs, smile, eat. Pretend this is a happy family Christmas. If you try anything, he glanced at the cameras, we'll know. The men stepped aside. I leaned down to my son and whispered, I won't leave you, I promise. Tears slid down his face. Papa, I'm scared, he said. So am I whispered back, but I'm here. They marched me upstairs, music played, laughter filled the air, plates were passed around. My son's wife sat at the table dressed in red, smiling brightly. When she saw me, her smile froze for just a second. You came, she said softly. I looked at her and felt my heart break. Where is my son? I asked. She didn't answer. She looked down at her plate. The father-in-law raised a glass. A toast, he announced, to family, to loyalty. Everyone cheered. I sat there, my hands shaking, watching people eat and laugh while my boy lay chained below their feet. As the night dragged on, I listened carefully. I watched closely. I noticed whispers between them, glances, tension hiding under smiles. This wasn't a celebration. It was a warning. Later, when the others were distracted, my son's wife leaned close to me. Her voice was barely above a breath. You shouldn't have come, she said. Help me, I whispered. Help your husband. Her eyes filled with tears. I can't, she said. If I do, they'll destroy us both. Why? I asked. What did he do? She swallowed hard. He found out something he wasn't supposed to know. Before I could ask more, her father called her name sharply. She pulled away, her face turning blank again. That night they let me sleep on the couch. I didn't close my eyes once. I listened to every sound, every footstep. Just before dawn, I heard a soft knock from the basement door. Then I heard my son scream. And I knew whatever secret he was hiding, they were about to punish him for it. I ran to the basement door as fast as my old legs could carry me, but the lock stopped me cold. I banged on it with my fists. Stop, I shouted. Please stop. My son's scream echoed again, sharp and full of pain. Then it cut off suddenly. The house went quiet. Footsteps came up the stairs. The basement door opened, and the father-in-law stepped out, adjusting his sleeves like he had just finished a simple chore. He's fine, he said calmly. Just needed a reminder. I pushed past him and rushed down the stairs. My son was still chained, breathing hard. Tears streaked his face. His hands shook. What did they do? I asked, kneeling beside him. They warned me, he whispered. They said if I talked, they'd make sure you never left this house. My heart pounded. Talk about what? I asked. He looked at the cameras, then back at me. Papa, this all started before the wedding. I leaned closer so only he could hear me. My wife's family was in trouble, he said. Big trouble. They owed money, a lot of it, to dangerous people. I frowned. Why didn't you tell me? They made me promise, he said. They said if I helped them, they'd accept me as their son. I wanted peace. I wanted a family. I squeezed his hand. What kind of help? He swallowed hard. They wanted my name, my signature. They wanted me to take loans in my name and move money through my accounts. My chest tightened. You did this. I didn't know how bad it was, he said quickly. They said it was temporary, just until things settled. And did they? I asked. He shook his head. It got worse, much worse. He explained slowly, stopping often to breathe. The loans grew. The debts grew. Every time he asked questions, they told him to be patient, to trust them, to stay quiet. Then one night he found documents hidden in the house, papers showing lies, fake businesses, fake names, money being moved in ways that could put him in prison. When I confronted them, he said, they smiled, just like they do upstairs, and they told me I belonged to them now. My hands clenched into fists. Your wife knew. Yes, he said softly. She begged me to stay quiet. She said her family would fall apart if I didn't. I closed my eyes. My boy had been trapped by love and loyalty, two things that should never be used as chains. They said Christmas was the deadline, he continued. If I didn't sign more papers by then, they'd make an example of me. And the broken leg, I asked. They pushed me down the stairs, he said. Then they chained me here. They said pain makes people obedient. I felt sick. Why didn't you run? I asked. I tried, he said. That's when they took my phone and sent you that message. Everything suddenly made sense. You're not alone, I told him firmly. I will get you out. He grabbed my hand weakly. Papa, listen to me. These people are dangerous. They have friends, connections. If you fight them openly, they'll crush you. I'm not fighting openly, I said quietly. He looked at me confused. I'm listening, I continued. I'm watching, and I'm going to use what they don't expect. That evening they gathered us upstairs again. Dinner, smiles, jokes. My son's wife barely touched her food. Her eyes followed her father constantly, like a child afraid to move. I sat silently, observing. I noticed how often the father-in-law checked his phone, how the brother kept stepping outside to make calls, how nervous they became whenever my son's name was mentioned. They were afraid of something. Later, when everyone was distracted by loud music, my son's wife came to me again. Her hands trembled. You know now, she whispered, don't you? Yes, I said, and you know this is wrong. She nodded, tears falling. I tried to stop them, she said. They threatened to turn everything on him, to blame it all on your son. Help me, I said, before it's too late. She hesitated, then she slipped something into my hand. A small flash drive. This has copies of the documents, she whispered. I hid it, if they find out. Her father's voice cut through the room. What are you two whispering about? She jumped back, her face pale. I closed my hand around the drive. That night, as I lay awake on the couch, I realized the truth. They weren't just hurting my son to get money. They were preparing to destroy him completely. And if I made one wrong move, they would destroy me too. Above me, I heard the front door open. Someone was leaving the house. And I had a terrible feeling that help for them was already on the way. I waited until the house fell quiet. The music stopped, doors closed, footsteps faded. Only the soft hum of the heater and the ticking of the wall clock remained. It was late, but sleep did not come to me. My mind was racing. The flash drive felt heavy in my pocket, like it carried a dangerous secret that could explode at any moment. I stood up slowly and looked around the living room. No one was there. I crept toward the hallway and paused, listening. Nothing. I moved one step at a time, careful not to make the floor creak. When I reached the basement door, I knelt and looked at the lock. It was still broken from earlier, but a chair had been pushed against it from the inside. They had done that to keep my son trapped and to warn me. I whispered his name. It's me. He answered softly, Papa. I'm here, I said. I need to talk to you. I pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. The basement light was dim. My son lay still, his face pale with pain. They're planning something, I whispered. Your wife gave me a flash drive. It has proof. His eyes widened. If they find out. They won't, I said, but we must be smart. I explained my plan slowly so he could understand. I told him I would pretend to agree with his in-laws, pretend to help them, pretend to be weak and afraid. You can't, he whispered. They'll use you. They already think they are, I replied. That's why this will work. He shook his head. Papa, I don't want you hurt. I placed my hand on his shoulder. I'm your father. This is my job. The next morning I did exactly what I said. I smiled. I spoke kindly. I thanked them for letting me stay. I acted like an old man who didn't understand what was happening. The father-in-law watched me closely. You seem calmer today, he said. I've had time to think, I replied. You're right, This is family business. I don't want trouble. His eyes narrowed. Good. I just want my son safe, I continued. If there's a way I can help, I will. Silence filled the room. The brother laughed. See, I told you he'd come around. The father-in-law leaned back in his chair. There may be something you can do, he said. But understand this, once you step in, there's no turning back. I nodded slowly. I understand. That afternoon, they allowed me to bring food and water to my son. It was their way of showing control, like giving crumbs to prove they were kind. I used that moment to whisper, they believe me. He looked at me with fear and hope mixed together. Be careful, he said. Later, the father-in-law took me aside. We need signatures, he said, but banks ask questions. They trust fathers. I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my face calm. What do you need me to sign? Nothing illegal, he said quickly, too quickly. Just papers to move money, temporary. I nodded again. I'll help. That night when everyone slept, I quietly took out my phone. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and plugged in the flash drive using a small adapter I always carried. What I saw made my hands shake. There were records of stolen money, fake accounts, names crossed out and replaced, dates that showed my son had been set up from the very beginning. If this information reached the wrong hands, my boy would spend his life in prison. Or worse. I copied everything to my phone and hid the flash drive back in my pocket. In the morning, the house was tense. Phones rang often. Whispers followed every call. Something was happening outside this house. Then, just before noon, the front door opened. Two men in dark coats stepped inside. They were not family. The father-in-law stood up quickly, his smile tight. Gentlemen, he said, you're early. One of the men looked around the room, then straight at me. We're here for the son, he said coldly, and this time we're not waiting. My heart stopped. They were no longer pretending. And I knew if I didn't act fast, my son would never leave that basement alive. The room felt smaller the moment those two men stepped inside. They stood near the door, tall and quiet, with eyes that didn't smile. Their coats were dark, their voices low and firm. They did not look like men who came to talk. They looked like men who came to take. My son's father-in-law forced a laugh. There must be some mistake, he said. This is a family gathering. One of the men shook his head slowly. Your problem, he said, is that time is up. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. I thought of my son chained in the basement, helpless, scared, broken. I thought of the papers on my phone, the lies, the trap they had built around him. I took a step forward. Please, I said, keeping my voice calm. There's been a misunderstanding. My son is sick. He can't go anywhere. The man looked at me like I was air. He owes, he said, and debts get paid. The father-in-law cleared his throat. We're handling it, he said quickly. Give us one more day. The second man laughed, short and sharp. You said that yesterday. Silence fell. I realized something then. These men didn't care about family. They didn't care about excuses. And they didn't care who got hurt. If they took my son, he would disappear. No hospital, no police, no goodbye. I had to act. I'll pay, I said suddenly. Every head turned toward me. The father-in-law stared at me in shock. What? He asked. I said I'll pay, I repeated. Whatever he owes, I'll take responsibility. The two men studied me. You, one asked. You look like a retired man living on memories. I have assets, I said. Savings, property, I can move money. The father-in-law's eyes widened. I could see panic behind his calm face. He hadn't planned for this. The men exchanged a look. Proof, one said. We need proof. I can show you, I said, but not here, not in front of everyone. They hesitated. Finally, one nodded. You have 2 hours, he said. Then we come back for the son. They left as quietly as they had arrived. The moment the door closed, the house exploded with noise. "Are you crazy?" the brother shouted. "You don't have that kind of money." The father-in-law grabbed my arm and pulled me close. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "You're making this worse." I leaned in and whispered so only he could hear. "I know everything." His face drained of color. "I've seen the documents," I continued calmly. "I know you set him up. I know you planned to blame him." His grip loosened. "You don't understand," he whispered back. "We're already trapped." "No," I said, "you are." I walked away before he could answer. I rushed to the basement. My son looked up when he saw my face. "Papa," he whispered, "what's happening?" "They're coming for you," I said honestly, "but I'm not letting that happen." I explained quickly. "The men, the debt, my promise." His eyes filled with fear. "You can't pay them," he said. "They'll take everything." "I'm not paying them," I said. "I'm buying time." "Time for what?" he asked. "For the truth to surface," I replied. I kissed his forehead. "Trust me." I went back upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom again. My hands shook as I opened my phone. I sent copies of everything, the documents, the recordings, the dates, to a trusted friend I had known for over 30 years. A man who worked in financial crimes. A man who owed me a favor. I typed one message. "If anything happens to my son, release everything." Then I waited. Minutes felt like hours. The father-in-law paced the living room. His wife cried softly. Phones rang and rang. Finally, my phone buzzed. A message from my friend. "I see it, it's bad, very bad, stay calm, help is moving." Relief washed over me, but I knew it wasn't over yet. An hour later, headlights flashed through the windows. The two men were back. They walked in, serious and silent. "Time up," one said. "Where's the son?" I stepped forward again. "Before you go downstairs," I said, "there's something you should see." They frowned. I held up my phone. "The debts," I said, "the lies, the real people responsible." I showed them just enough. Names, transfers, proof that my son was not the mastermind but the victim. The men's faces changed. "You were used," one said slowly, looking at the father-in-law. The father-in-law shook his head. "He's lying." But it was too late. Sirens wailed in the distance. Everyone froze. The two men backed away from the stairs. "This just got complicated," one muttered. The father-in-law's wife began to cry loudly. The sirens grew closer. And I knew the storm had finally reached this house. But I also knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just about saving my son. This was about ending everything they had done. And the final reckoning was about to begin. The sirens grew louder, then suddenly stopped right outside the house. For one long second, no one moved. The two men in dark coats looked at each other. The father-in-law's face turned gray. His wife clutched the table. My son's wife began to shake. Then there was a loud knock on the door. "Open up," a firm voice called. "Police." Everything happened at once. The brother tried to run toward the back door, but one of the dark-coated men grabbed his arm. "Don't be stupid," he warned. "This isn't our fight anymore." The father-in-law rushed toward me, his voice low and angry. "Call them off," he hissed. "You don't know what you've started." "I know exactly what I started," I replied calmly. The knocking came again, louder. The father-in-law opened the door with trembling hands. Two police officers stepped inside, followed by a man in a suit. He looked around slowly, taking in the scene, the tension, the fear. "I'm with financial crimes," the man said. "We received information about fraud, coercion, and unlawful restraint." The father-in-law laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. It's a family matter." The man in the suit looked straight at him. "Then you won't mind if we ask a few questions." They asked for names, phones, documents. The room filled with quiet clicking sounds as officers took photos and notes. The father-in-law tried to stay calm, but his hands would not stop shaking. "Where is your son-in-law?" one officer asked. Before anyone could answer, I spoke. "In the basement," I said, "chained with a broken leg." The room went silent. The officer's eyes hardened. "Take us there." The father-in-law stepped forward quickly. "Wait," he said, "there's no need." The officer raised a hand. "Now." They went down the stairs. I followed closely, my heart racing. When the basement light came on and they saw my son, everything changed. "This is serious," one officer said, "very serious." They called for medical help immediately. They removed the chain carefully. My son cried, not from pain this time, but from relief. "I told you I'd get you out," I whispered. As they carried him upstairs on a stretcher, my son's wife broke down completely. She fell to her knees, sobbing. "I tried to stop them," she cried. "They wouldn't listen." The man in the suit turned to her. "You should have spoken sooner," he said gently, "but now you will tell us everything." Upstairs, the two dark-coated men were being questioned too. They were not arrested, but their confidence was gone. They avoided everyone's eyes. "This family lied to us," one of them said. "We want no part of this." Ambulance lights flashed outside. My son was taken away, finally free, finally safe. I thought it was over. I was wrong. As the officers continued asking questions, the father-in-law suddenly raised his voice. "He did it," he shouted, pointing at my son's wife. "She knew everything. She signed papers too." She screamed in shock. "That's not true." The brother joined in. "She helped hide the money." The room erupted into shouting. The man in the suit raised his voice. "Enough." He turned to me. "Sir," he said, "there is more here than we thought, much more." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my friend. "They're pushing blame fast. Someone is trying to move money right now." My heart sank. I realized then that even with police in the house, the danger was not over. Someone was still pulling strings from the shadows, and they were trying to erase everything before morning. The house felt colder as night deepened. Police lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls blue and red. Officers moved in and out, making calls, writing notes, asking the same questions again and again. But even with all of them there, I felt a tight knot in my chest. Someone was still trying to run. The man from financial crime stepped aside to take a call. His face grew serious. When he hung up, he walked straight toward me. "Money is being moved," he said quietly. "Right now, large amounts." "From where?" I asked. "From accounts connected to this family," he replied, "and one account we didn't expect." My heart skipped. "Which one?" He looked at me carefully. "Your son's account." I felt like the floor shifted under my feet. "That's impossible," I said. "He's been chained in a basement." "I know," the man said, "which means someone else has access." We both turned slowly toward my son's wife. She stood frozen near the wall, her eyes wide, her hands clenched at her sides. "I didn't do it," she said quickly. "I swear." Before anyone could respond, the father-in-law laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. "She's lying," he said. "She's always been weak. She couldn't even stand up to her own husband." She burst into tears. "You made me," she cried. "You told me if I didn't help, you'd destroy him." The room erupted again. "Enough," the officer shouted. The man from financial crimes raised his hand. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Someone here is trying to empty accounts before they're frozen. If they succeed, the money will disappear, and your son will still be blamed." I stepped forward. "How much time do we have?" He checked his phone. "Minutes." My mind raced. I remembered something my son had said in the basement, something I hadn't fully understood at the time. "They always watch," he had whispered. "Cameras," I said suddenly. "Check the security system." The brother stiffened. The officer turned to him. "Where is the control panel?" The brother hesitated. "I don't know." The father-in-law snapped, "Don't be stupid." That was all the officer needed. Two policemen moved toward the hallway. They found a small, locked room near the study. Inside were monitors, cameras everywhere: the living room, the basement, the hallway, and the study. On one screen, I saw it clearly. A laptop open on the study desk. Hands typing fast. "Zoom in," the officer said. The image sharpened. The hands belonged to my son's wife. She collapsed to the floor when she realized we had seen her. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I was trying to fix it. I was trying to move the money back." The man from financial crimes crouched beside her. "That's not what the transfer shows," he said gently. "It's going out, not back." She shook her head wildly. "No, no, no. He told me what to do." I asked. Her eyes darted to her father. He stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. "You promised," she cried. "You said once the police came, we'd clean everything and blame the outsiders." The father-in-law exploded. "Stop talking." The officer grabbed him by the arm. "You don't give orders anymore." The truth was spilling out faster now. The father-in-law had planned everything. The debts, the fake businesses, the loans in my son's name. When my son questioned him, he decided to break him and use Christmas as the final deadline. If it worked, my son would take the fall. If it failed, others would. "And her?" I asked, my voice heavy. "She helped," the man said quietly, "out of fear and love and pressure." I felt a deep sadness, not for the father-in-law, but for my son, trapped between people who claimed to love him. Suddenly, an officer's radio crackled loudly. "We have a problem," a voice said. "A vehicle just left the area, high speed." "Who?" the officer asked. The reply came sharp and fast. "One of the dark-coated men. He ran." My heart dropped. The man from financial crimes cursed under his breath. "If he escapes with copies, this could get ugly." "Go," the officer ordered his team. "Now." Half the officers rushed out. The father-in-law laughed again, desperate and wild. "You see," he said, "this will never end." I looked at him with steady eyes. "It ends tonight." My phone buzzed. A message from my friend. They froze most accounts, but one transfer slipped through. We traced it. I typed back with shaking fingers, "Where?" The reply came almost instantly. "To an offshore account, name just added." My breath caught. The name on the screen was my son's. I realized then what the final move had been. They didn't just want to steal the money. They wanted to make sure my son would never truly be free. And unless we stopped that last transfer in time, everything we had fought for would collapse right at the finish line. The room was silent after I read my son's name on the screen. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that presses on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. "They planned it perfectly," the man from financial crimes said quietly. "If that offshore account stays active, your son's name will be tied to everything forever." I felt my knees weaken, but I did not sit down. I had not come this far to fall now. "There must be a way to stop it," I said. "There is," he replied, "but it has to be done now." He moved quickly, making calls, giving instructions. Officers spoke into radios. Laptops opened. Phones rang. The house that had once been full of fake laughter was now filled with sharp, serious voices. I stood there, watching it all, thinking about my boy lying in an ambulance somewhere, finally free from chains but still trapped by lies written on paper. Then the man looked up at me. "We need your son's direct authorization to reverse the transfer," he said, his voice on record. "But he's hurt," I said. "He's in the hospital." "We can do it remotely," he replied, "if he's awake." My hands shook as I called the hospital. When the nurse answered and put the phone near my son, I heard his weak voice. "Papa," he said. "I'm here," I replied, fighting tears. "Listen to me carefully." I explained everything slowly, clearly, the way a father explains something important to a child. I told him about the account, the last transfer, the final trap. "They want to keep you chained with your name," I said. "Not with metal this time, but with blame." There was a pause, then he said, "Tell me what to do." The man from financial crimes spoke gently, guiding him step by step. My son repeated the words clearly. He stated his name. He stated he did not approve the transfer. He stated he had been forced, threatened, and restrained. When it was done, the man nodded. "That's it." He typed fast. The screen refreshed. "Transfer reversed," he said. "Account frozen." I closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for days. Around us, the truth finally settled. The father-in-law slumped into a chair, his shoulders heavy. He did not shout anymore. He did not smile. The brothers stared at the floor. The house felt smaller without their power filling it. My son's wife sat quietly, her face streaked with tears. She looked at me and whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. "Sorry doesn't heal broken bones," I said calmly, "but telling the truth can stop more damage." She nodded and spoke openly then. She told them everything, how her father planned it, how he used fear, how he told her that love meant obedience, how she believed him until it was too late. The officers listened. Everything was recorded. Nothing was hidden anymore. By morning, the house was empty. The father-in-law and his brother were taken away in handcuffs. The fake businesses were shut down. Accounts were seized. The men in dark coats disappeared from the story, cutting ties the moment the lies were exposed. Justice did not come with shouting or fists. It came with truth. I went to the hospital as soon as I could. My son lay in bed, his leg in a cast, his face tired but peaceful. When he saw me, he smiled. "You came," he said softly. "I always come," I replied. He reached for my hand. I thought I had to handle everything alone. "That's where they trapped you," I said gently. "Good people think silence keeps peace. Bad people use silence to hurt." He nodded slowly. Weeks passed. My son healed, slowly, painfully, but fully. His name was cleared. The charges that once hovered over him were gone. He walked again. He laughed again. And one day he stood on his own feet and hugged me like he did when he was a boy. His marriage ended quietly. There was no anger left, only understanding. Some families are not broken by strangers, but by secrets kept too long. That Christmas we sat together in my small living room. No feast, no noise, just peace. My son looked at me and said, "If you had listened to that message, I don't know what would have happened." I looked at him and replied, "A father listens to words, but he follows his instincts." That is the lesson I carry now. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone tells you to stay away without reason, ask why. And never let silence chain the people you love. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is show up.